Today we're going to talk about the public protest of wind turbines. To give some background information, the wind industry is responsible for producing about 4% of the United States annual power usage. This is enough to power a couple 100,000 homes, which is why the industry is so important. Another reason is that it's also the most rapidly expanding industry and is responsible for producing about 30% of all new electricity produced. Shown are charts by state with the state's usage of wind turbine energy versus the total consumed by that state. As awesome as this is, not everyone thinks so, and there have actually been many cases of public protest. The main few arguments for these protests are that the noise affects the quality of living for the surrounding residents of that area. The wind turbines are just not aesthetically pleasing. They're ugly, and they are ruining the natural beauty of the land. And thirdly, that these are actually killing birds and bats, and it's just a total hazard to the environment around them. Now, the actual purpose of this is that we're going to talk about how these complaints that the protesters have may or may not be valid, but they also may originate from what's called a nocebo effect, which we will be discussing next. So we're going to discuss about what is a nocebo effect. Well, you may be familiar with what a placebo is, which is when someone thinks that something is affecting them in a way, and it might actually be the case, and it's just the person's mind making them think that. So the nocebo effect is just a negative placebo. So for example, if someone lives near a wind turbine and they believe in their heads that a wind turbine is going to lower their quality of life, and they see it, then they're actually going to believe it. Now, if they didn't see the wind turbine, but it was still there, let's say there was a big tree blocking it, then this would not affect them in the same way, even though the wind turbine was still present. So, the first discussion is about the noise complaints. As you can see on the chart, this is how, for a decently large wind turbine, the noise breakdown is. As you can see, the farther away you are from the wind turbine, the quieter it gets. Most regulations require a wind turbine to be about 400 meters from the nearest residential area, which quiets the turbine down to under 40 decibels. Now we're going to talk about how the noise actually claims to be affecting residents, in which case they believe that they are victim to something called wind turbine syndrome, which can affect them physically. They believe that it's hurting their hearing, and that the stress and the fact it keeps them up at night is impeding their life. So it's just adding stress, and it's hurting their quality of living. Now, there's actually been a couple case studies which have been founded by wind turbine industries because of these claims, and if it actually is hurting people and their quality of life, they want to know about it. So they've actually done some testing, and the hardest thing when doing the test and collecting data is to actually get rid of the nocebo effect, because basically when you have a placebo or a nocebo, it's all mental and it's actually biased. So making it random and non-biased is the key. There was actually a study where these surveyors did a survey in two separate areas, one closer to the wind turbine and one much farther away, but they didn't let the people taking the survey know what the information was for. So after actually filling out the survey for a couple hundred tests in each area, they compared the results and found that the differences were minimal, and that the conclusion from the stats proved that the quality of living in the area was very similar and comparable. So that if the difference was actually the cause of the wind turbine, it's just because of the nocebo effect, and the people that live near the wind turbine are just lowering their own quality of life because that's what their brain is actually telling them. It's not actually happening, they just think it is. So for now, that's the first argument, and for my group mates, this is actually a little bit different from the essay that you read, which will be revised, so I hope that's okay.